In this video, we're going to use what we were doing with graphing our quadratic functions to talk about solving a quadratic equation. So the difference here being it's not going to be y equals, it's going to be equals 0. So when we solve quadratic equations, what we're looking for are the zeros or the x-intercepts. And I do want to point out before we talk about our steps that we always want to decide which form it is in first. So we want to decide whether it is in standard form, vertex form, or factored form, because that's what's going to lead us into our first step, which is graph the function. I said get the equation set equal to 0, but that's already going to be done in each of these examples. Then we're going to graph, and then we're going to determine the zeros by looking at the x-intercepts. Now we have 3 examples here. They're each in a different form. And for the sake of not making this video 25 minutes long, I'm going to kind of go through and already pick out my important stuff. So do a lot of the background work in order to graph it more quickly. Let's take a look at our first example. So example 1 is definitely standard form, x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. I am already equal to 0, so I'm okay there. And when I am in standard form, I want to start by finding my vertex. So I'm going to do negative b over 2a. I'm going to plug that in to find my y value, and I'm going to use that information to do my table of values. So I already did a lot of that for us. So I found our vertex by doing negative b over 2a and plugging in. So 3 comma negative 1. I've got that right here in my table of values. My y-intercept is 0 comma 8. And to finish my table of values, I would plug in 2, and I'm going to get 0. I've already done it off to the side. I would plug in 1, and I'm going to get 3. Using my symmetry, I know that if I plug in 4, I should get 0. And if I plug in 5, I should get 3. So I did a bunch of scrap work beforehand, just so that we didn't have too long of a video with too much work. I'm going to go ahead and plot my points. So starting with my vertex, I like to do that one first, 3 comma negative 1. I'm going to go to the right 3 and down 1. So that's my first point. And then I'm going to go back and draw in my axis of symmetry. So that's the vertical line that goes right through the center there. Now I'm going to plot my points 1 comma 3. So to the right 1 up 3, 1, 2, 3. And then 2 comma 0. So to the right 2 up and down 0. I can just go ahead and use symmetry to plot those points on the either side. And then I'm going to go ahead and plot my y-intercept just so that it's there, because I like to know where it's at. So 0 comma 8. So 0 left and right and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll have to do a little bit of guessing right there. Drawing in my nice smooth U. And that's my graph. Whoops. Now, when I go to find my solutions to this equation, because I'm equal to 0, I'm not equal to y, I'm looking for my x-intercepts, also called my zeros. So I can look to my graph and see it right here at 2 and right here at 4. Or I can look to my table of values, see where my y equals 0 at 2 and at 4. So I have 2 solutions to this equation, 2 and 4. 2 separate solutions. That's not a point, that's 2 separate solutions, so no parentheses there. This is my answer. All the rest of this is my work leading up to that answer. Okay, now example 2. So example 2, I am in vertex form, because I've got this x minus 4 squared minus 2. I went ahead and picked my h comma k. So my vertex is 4 comma negative 2, which makes my axis of symmetry equal to 4. Now, when I go to find my y-intercept, I plug 0 in for x, and I do my arithmetic, and I get a very large number, which is way far off my grid. So this isn't going to help me. I'm going to go ahead and plot my vertex in my axis of symmetry, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do to fix that problem. So I'm going to go ahead and plot 4, negative 2. So to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 2. And I'm going to go ahead and draw in my axis of symmetry there. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than plot this 0, 30, which would be way off my graph, I'm going to do a little table of values, just a little one. And I'm going to go ahead and put 4, negative 2 in the middle. And I'm going to go down 2, and I'm going to go up 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug 2 in to my equation to see what my y is. And then I'm going to plug 3 in, and then I'm going to use my symmetry. So I'm going to pause for a second and do that arithmetic, and you're just going to trust me. Okay, so I plugged 2 in here and did 2 minus 4. I squared it. I multiplied by 2. I subtracted 2. I got 6. And then I plugged 3 in, and I got 0. Now, right away, you can see 3 is going to be one of our answers because that y value is 0. I'm going to go ahead and get my graph done, and I am going to use my symmetry here. So if I plug in 5, I should get 0, and if I plug in 6, I should get 6. So I'm going to plot these points, 2, 6, so to the right 2 and up 6, 3, 0. We already did 4, negative 2, 5, 0, and 6, 6. And then once again, I do have 2 solutions. So I can either look here to my graph at x equals 3 and 5, or I can look here to my table of values where my y is 0, x equals 3, and x equals 5. So again, I have 2 solutions here, x equals 3 or 5. That's my answer. The rest of that is my work. Let's take a look at our third example. Our third example is in factored form. Now here's the thing in factored form. I can draw my graph and everything, but in factored form, remember, finding the zeros is the easy thing. And what I'm looking for when I'm solving by graphing is my zeros. So if I'm looking for my zeros here, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Some of you use the trick where you just take the opposite. That's fine. Just be careful. So my 2 zeros are 2, 0 and negative 3, 0. So I already know my answers are 2 and negative 3. But let's graph it because I was told to solve by graphing. Plotting my zeros, 2, 0 is here. Negative 3, 0 is 1, 2, 3 here. I know my axis of symmetry is halfway in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to go 2.5. 1, 2.5. And then here's the thing. So I know that that's where my vertex is. I know this opens up because my A is positive. And since what I'm really looking for is my zeros, I'm just going to do a rough sketch because I already know my zeros. I know it's going to open up. I know my vertex is on that axis of symmetry. So that graph is good enough because what I really care about is those 2 points there, which I already know from finding the zeros. And that is how we solve by graphing.